what if there were phrases that you could listen for when dating a guy that would give you a clear window into his mindset and let you know whether or not he had the skills to co-create a really healthy relationship with you? One of the things I've learned over the years is that the words we speak are actually a reflection of our mindset and our level of awareness. And we know this. When you have someone who is a pessimist or they're a complaining mindset, what do? They complain about things. When you have someone who's an optimist or who has an abundant mindset, what are they doing? They're talking about possibilities. Here's an easy example to understand this that Wayne Dyer used to use. Take a glass, you take a lime, you squeeze the lime, what comes out of it is lime juice. Why? Well, it's because lime juice is what was in there in the first place. When we're using language and that's what's coming out of us, it's because it's reflecting the mindset and the awareness that's what's in us in the first place. Especially when life squeezes us and you hear particular phrases, you get a good indication of what was in the guy in the first place. So what you want to do is you want to listen for phrases that indicate what his level of awareness is when it comes to relationship skills. If he has a low level of awareness for relationship skills, it's going to produce a low level relationship. If he has a higher level of awareness for relationship skills, right? How to communicate authentically, how to navigate challenges, how to hold space for somebody, that is going to be expressed into certain phrases and actions. You're going to hear it in his language. So today I'm going to share with you 6 types of phrases that when you hear these phrases in this guy, it may not lead to the kind of relationship that you want. Now, fair warning, this is not about being judgmental. This is not about, boxing somebody. And what these phrases are is these are called red flag phrases. The red flag phrases, which means that when you hear them, you want to paint them red, bring it up and address it quickly so that you can decide whether or not this relationship has the potential to be the quality of relationship that you want. So let's dive in. All right. So I've got these phrases right here for you. The first category of phrases you want to pay attention to are what are called fixed mindset phrases. A fixed mindset is the idea that someone can't grow, can't improve, and can't change. And in any great relationship, we have to grow and improve. That's how we actually cultivate closeness over time. And so if you hear him say things like, well, this is just the way that I am, or I'm not good at talking about my feelings, right? That phrase right there indicates that he's resigning to the fact that his current level of skill set is all he's got, right? He's not willing to actually get better. Or this one, let's just agree to disagree. Let's just agree to disagree. In other words, he's limiting himself to saying, I don't know that I have the capacity to find a way for us to really understand each other. So I'm just going to give up. Way more powerful are growth-centered phrases, growth mindset, where someone is willing to, instead of that's just the way that I am, someone who says, hey, I don't feel like I've got the skill set right now, but I'm willing to grow. What's required for us to actually get where we want to go? Someone who says, I'm not good at talking about my feelings, who's also willing to say, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to grow in this area. So you're looking not for fixed mindset, you're looking for growth mindset. Number 2 is what we call the manipulator mindset. So what are manipulator phrases? If you hear any of these phrases, these are absolute red flags. And it's, if you really cared about me, you'd, anything that follows that. If you really loved me, you would do this. If you really cared about me, you showed up in this way. That's manipulation at its finest. It's okay to ask for what you want, but that person who uses that tactic probably doesn't even know that that's manipulation. They probably have just seen it growing up. That's how their parents did it. That's how people that they've modeled have done it. And so again, we're not judging, but it's a very low level of awareness of how to get what you want in relationships. Another manipulative statement is you shouldn't feel that way. And this one comes out a lot, right? This one indicates a lack of awareness that people's feelings are their feelings. They're not right, they're not wrong, but they are. And so you got to respect how people feel. To tell someone they shouldn't feel that particular way completely dismisses their experience. And so you want to be with someone who honors how you feel, not someone who's going to try to control how you feel or who doesn't know how to hold space. The next phrase, which is very similar to the one I just mentioned in the manipulator category, is you're overreacting. It's not that big of a deal. Like there have been times in my life where I said that and then realized that's not healthy. That's not a healthy thing to say. That's me projecting what I believe to be the right emotional response in the relationship. Everyone has to have their own emotional response. Another one, nobody else would put up with you the way I do. Ooh, man. Talk about control. Nobody else would put up with you the way that I do. What this person is doing is they're demeaning the worthiness of this other person, saying that I'm the only one who will love you. And it's an attempt to gain control in the relationships. In other words, manipulate. The third category of red flag phrases is the mindset of the victim. And you will know you're with the victim when they say things like this. Why does this always happen to me? Oh, and they start blaming circumstances, situations, or conditions. Or they'll say things like, nothing ever works out for me. In other words, perpetuating this mindset of self-defeat, that they're always the loser and that they are at the victim of life, circumstances, situations. Another one is, you don't understand how hard things are for me, right? Which is deflecting responsibility, saying that you don't understand, I'm at the effect of life, and they're not taking responsibility ultimately for their experience. There's really two fundamental mindsets that we have. One is victim, as if life is happening to me, and the other is responsible, as if I'm co-creating my experience of life and I'm co-creating my results. That isn't always an easy shift to make. And it's not one that you can cause the other person to make. It's the shift that someone can make only when they've decided to make it. When they've decided to say, I'm moving out of victim because it doesn't ultimately get me what I want, and I'm moving into responsible because that's where my true power lies. And so when you hear people say these phrases, be aware of the kind of relationship that creates, because it is often fraught with arguments and energy where they're blaming everything but themselves. A friend of mine got into a relationship with a woman. He fell head over heels in love with this woman. And it was like, I have no reservations. I'm going to ask her to marry me. It was like 6 months into dating. He proposed. They got married. And I remember we all went bowling one night and she was just complaining about her job. And she was like, I hate my job. It's long hours. My boss gives me all kinds of projects. I'm doing the work of 3 people. We were having fun bowling. And I said, hey, well, just out of curiosity, why don't you leave that job? Like, why don't you just quit? Go get another job. And she got so angry at me in that moment. She's like, you don't understand how hard it is for me. It was back to the victim mindset phrase. You don't understand. I can't quit because. All circumstance driven. I've got 4 years into this career. They've paid for my master's degree. If I quit now, I'm going to have to pay them back for my master's degree. It was just circumstance, good reasons on the surface, but is it worth trading your soul for as you go to the soul-sucking job every single day? See, those people who move from empowerment, they find ways to win. They find ways to create what they want. Victims never do and complain about it. Now, the fourth category of red flag phrases, this mindset, it's a cousin to the victim mindset, but I wanted to parse it out because it's so pervasive and it happens so often. And that is where you're a victim to your emotions. In other words, when you hear someone say, you're making me so mad, or you're pissing me off, this and that, what they're doing is they're putting the power in the other person. Little kids do this all the time. And if we haven't learned that nobody else can dictate how you feel without your permission, we are the ones that get to choose how we feel. You take 2 people who are walking down the street, and you take somebody who's going to taunt them and talk crap to them. One person recognizes it as the taunter's problem, not their own problem. They stay peaceful. They stay centered. The other person loses their mind and punches that person out. Same circumstance. 2 different people have 2 very different experiences because of how they navigate their own emotions, how they regulate their own emotions. So when you hear phrases like this, you're making me so fill in the blank. Or I can't be happy because of you. I can't be happy because I'm the one who's taking care of all the responsibilities. I'm holding up your end of the bargain. Again, victim mindset. I wouldn't act like this if you didn't push me. Woo! Victim mindset. In other words, because you're acting that way, you're forcing me to act this way. No, you are 100% responsible for how you act and what you're feeling in that moment. We have a major epidemic right now of people who love to take the victim mindset. You're making me uncomfortable. That's a big one that you hear. I need you to go away because you're making me uncomfortable. Very much a victim mindset. You can decide to remove yourself from that situation. You can decide to put yourself in a different environment, but nobody has the power to control how you feel without your permission. You're co-participating in that experience. It's not my fault. You made me do it. So in other words, lack of responsibility, that this person isn't actually claiming their own responsibility. So ultimately what this entire category of lack of emotional responsibility is they're blaming other people for the way they feel. What you want to hear in a relationship, they can express how they feel. They can express their dislike or feeling angry or feeling pissed off or any of that stuff. But the way you want to hear it is, when this happens, I feel this way. Or in this moment right now, I'm feeling this way. It's a small nuance with a very powerful difference. They're not blaming and going victim and disempowering themselves. They're claiming their own emotions, which empowers them to actually move from a place of responsibility to change those emotions and co-create a solution together. Two more, and the last one is probably the most pervasive, right? That you really want to pay attention to. But first, let's go to number 5. Because number 5 is the gaslighter mindset. In other words, the person who's trying to emotionally control you. So if you hear any of these phrases, ooh, red flag, bring it up, or run the other way. Number 1, you're just too sensitive. In other words, demeaning or diminishing your emotional experience. Number 2, everyone else thinks I'm right. That's called bandwagon. Anytime you hear somebody say, well, this person and this person and this person agree with me, or everybody else agrees with me, you can call that out and you say, I'm not interested in what anyone else has to say. This is you and me and the agreement we're going to make. Another phrase of the gaslighter is this one. After everything I've done for you, you act like this. Ooh, man. What is that? Right? That's guilt tripping the person. Guilt tripping the person to make them feel like they're in debt to the gaslighter so that the gaslighter can maintain control. So any of those categories, guilt tripping, right? Bandwagon, or telling you that you shouldn't feel a certain way, all gaslighter, all major red flag phrases where you should raise it up and say, no more, we are not going to have this kind of communication, or I'm out of here, or you just get up and say, I'm done now. And this brings us to number 6. The 6th category for red flag phrases is name calling and labeling. And you can spot this one a mile away and put a kibosh to it. If they name call you or they label your behavior, labeling is like name calling, but it's about your behavior. So it sounds like this. You're so lazy. You're such a drama queen. You're acting crazy. When they label you like this or name call you like this, you cut it off right away. This is an indicator that this person has learned how to communicate their feelings in a toxic way. Name calling and labeling is toxic because you can't go anywhere from there. You can't change that. He's labeling you as an entire way of being versus, hey, let's talk about the circumstance and create a new agreement around this circumstance, right? Things like, you're so selfish. You're a complete idiot. It attacks someone's character instead of the circumstance. You're pathetic, right? You hear people say this. It's like crazy. You're impossible to deal with, right? As labeling this person inherently difficult, implying that they're a problem rather than discussing the specific behavior and how to solve it. You're such a nag all the time. Things like that. You hear someone say those phrases, immediately end the conversation, push pause, take a break, and say, I am not willing to engage in a conversation where we name call. If you want to have a healthy conversation, I'm here, but let's take a 20-minute break right now. Boom. Like that. And so this is an opportunity where you hear these phrases. It literally helps you recognize the level of awareness that the person you're dating has and whether or not you feel like there's an opportunity there to evolve the conversation and evolve the mindset to a place that's going to co-create a great relationship. So with this red flag, again, paint it red right away, bring it up saying, I'm not willing to participate at this level of relationship, and then invite them into a way of being. They will either raise their game, which is possible. They can raise their game, or they're going to get angry, they're going to get defensive, they're going to get critical, which just tells you, ooh, I'm so glad you're showing me this now so I can set you on your way and make room for someone who is healthy. Because here's the truth. There is a person out there who is a perfect match for your level of awareness, a perfect match to create that healthy, thriving, abundant, joy-filled, passionate relationship that you are calling in. I know this. I've seen it over and over and over again. People who come in to my coaching programs who've been single for years and who apply these principles, and literally everything begins to change around them. And that same possibility exists right now for you, or if you're already in a relationship, to take it even deeper. So my question for you is, I've just given a partial list here of red flag phrases. What are some of the red flag phrases that you have heard that have indicated for you, hey, it's time to run? Go ahead and post those in the comment section below. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.